Welcome to the Leaping Hare Virtual Conventions quiz game. This is our version of Call My Bluff. Now, if you are of a certain age, you will probably know what Call My Bluff was, and if you're below that certain age, then you might need an explaining it to you. So the explanation is, Call My Bluff used to be a TV show both on British and American television, in which two panels of celebrities would meet up with a host, and on British TV that host was a chap called Robert Robinson. Robert Robinson would read out a very obscure word dug from the depths of the dictionary that hardly anyone had ever heard of. And one panel of the three celebrities would take their turn to each define what the word meant. But only one of them was telling the truth. The other two were lying. Now, the panellists themselves weren't entirely sure who was telling the truth and who was lying, so they each gave it their best rendition. Then the other panel had to guess which the correct meaning was. If they guessed correctly, they gained a point, and if they got it wrong, the bluffing team gained a point. So you get the gist. For our Leaping Hare version, I have 4 words. Each of them is connected to magic and mysticism and esotericism. I'm going to read out each word, and I'm going to give you 3 possible meanings. Sadly, we don't have a panel of 3 celebrities because the whole point of this self-isolation period is that we don't have 3 people sitting together in a room, so it's just going to be me. So I'll read out the 3 meanings and then pause a while for you to mumble and think about and mull over what possible one might be correct, and you take your guess, and then I will give you the correct meaning. And whoever scores the most points at the end of the 4-round quiz will win an all-expenses paid trip to Narnia. Your ticket will be waiting for you in the back of the wardrobe. Are we ready to begin? Our first word is diaperus or diparus. So what does it mean? Well, our first possible meaning, meaning A, is that a diparus place is a place, or it can also apply to a person, which smells very, very strongly of incense. So this could be a temple, a church, a shrine, it could be a coven's meeting place, it could indeed be a priest or a priestess or a shaman or a druid or any manner of person who spends so much time walking through clouds and clouds of billowing incense that now, whenever they enter a room, they bring with them the imbued waft of frankincense or myrrh or copal gum or other such exotic fragrances with them, and they bring a spiritual uplift with those wonderful aromas and scents. So diprus, a person or a place which smells strongly of incense. However, you may not believe that meaning, in which case, meaning B. Diparos is an ancient Greek adjective used to describe a woman, a mortal woman, who has become pregnant with a deity, such as Danae in Greek mythology or the Virgin Mary in Christian tradition, where there she has been going about her daily business and suddenly a god has descended upon her in a cloud of blinding light, if indeed you can have a cloud of blinding light. But the deity has descended upon her, impregnated her, and she has carried this magical, mysterious, wonderful child for 9 long months, before finally giving birth to a demigod or a demigoddess. So that woman henceforward, for the rest of her life, will be referred to, at least if she were living in ancient Greece, she would be referred to as Diaparos, capable of birthing deity. Or, if you don't fancy that meaning, you might consider meaning number 3, meaning sea. Is a Diprus person someone so gullible, so paranoid, so anxiety-ridden that they fear to tread upon the cracks in pavements, they fear to leave their house in case a black cat should cross their path. They fear to have arguments with toothless old women or bearded old men in case said old women or older men mutter curses and imprecations in strange and ancient runic languages under their breath and visit curses and hexes upon them. In other words, somebody so susceptible to anxiety about ill-fated magic of curses and hexes and jinxes and malign influences that they become almost paralysed by fear and unable to do much of anything in case some ill luck should befall them. So those are your three choices. Diprus or Diparus. Does this mean A, a person or place that smells strongly of incense? B, a woman who has given birth to deity? Or C, some very gullible individual who is terrified of ill magic? Have a think and decide. Have you decided? A, B or C? The correct answer to this one is B. Diparos is a woman capable of giving birth to deity. Did you guess correctly? If so, give yourself a mark. If you guessed incorrectly, then poke yourself with an athame. But not too hard, because we don't want a court case about it. And so we move on to our second word, theolepsy. Now, what does theolepsy mean, I hear you ask? There are three possible meanings as per the previous round. I'll read you the three possible meanings, and then you can tell me which one you think is true. Is theolepsy A, the state of being possessed by a god, an ancestor, a totem, or some other spirit? So a theoleptic is a person who falls into trance states in which their mind turns off and is spirited away to other dimensions, and their body is taken control of by a spiritual presence, usually a deity, but it can be other entities, and that being, that god, that ancestor, that totem animal, or whatever it might be, speaks through the individual's mouth. It's a practice that can be seen in many different religions. For example, in Santeria, a candomblé, that's found in various parts of Central and South America, as well as other parts around the world. It can be seen in those Pentecostal churches where the Holy Spirit takes possession of people and they speak in tongues. It can be seen, arguably, in Wiccan circles, the length and breadth of the world, where the high priestess calls down the moon and the goddess speaks through her, or the high priest calls down the sun to similar effect. Theolepsy, the state of being possessed by a deity or other spirit. Or, if you don't fancy that interpretation, is it B, theolepsy, same pronunciation, but a description in theology, the study of religious matters, in which a god or goddess is said to have a period in which they are asleep or possibly even dead. So, for example, in ancient Greek mythology, from which this term derives, for it is a Greek word, the goddess Demeter, when her daughter Kore is in the underworld married to her husband Hades, the goddess Demeter goes into grieving and into sleep. The earth herself falls into deep sleep during the winter months. And so the goddess of the earth during that period cannot be communed with or contacted, for she is in a deep, deep sleep and will only awaken again during the spring when her daughter returns to her. Indeed, the Greek story goes that when her daughter was very first abducted by Hades, Themeter flew into such a state of grief and horror and rage and incomprehensible fury that she was only finally reduced to a peaceful state when the god Hypnos administered to her a draught of what we would these days call opium, sleeping poppy. So theolepsy, a period in which a god or a goddess is asleep or possibly even considered to be dead or beyond the capacity of mortals to contact. Or, if you don't fancy that interpretation, is theolepsy C, a building in which only women are allowed to be present, from which all men are excluded? The theolepsy is a place of spiritual contemplation, the most famous example of which comes from ancient Rome, for this is indeed a Latin word. The house of the Vestal Virgins was the theolepsy, the house of the priestesses, or the house of the goddesses, if you prefer. Many different cultures have systems where priestesses, or obviously if you're a Catholic you might refer to nuns, although if you're a Catholic you probably wouldn't be listening to this, but never mind, in which women seclude themselves for spiritual contemplation, for study, for worship, for devotion, for spiritual attainment, and no man is allowed to step foot in that place. So theolepsy, a sacred house of women. So your three possible interpretations are A, the state of being possessed by a god or goddess; B, the sleep of a god or goddess, for example during the winter months; or C, a female-only space for priestesses, a building where only priestesses are allowed to live or worship. Take your time and decide A, B or C. Did you decide your answer? The correct answer is A, the state of being possessed by a god, goddess or other spirit. Theolepsy. So give yourself a point or a poke with a blunt wand if you got it wrong. Our next term, third round, Astrologaster. So does Astrologaster mean a person particularly commonly found in India, but also many other countries as well, who is consulted by engaged couples who want to find the most auspicious date on which to hold their wedding? The astrologaster will look at the astrological patterns involving both the native chart, the birth chart of the husband and of the wife, and of the various possible days on which they could hold their wedding, and tell them which day the stars fall in the most auspicious pattern to guarantee them a long, happy and fruitful marriage. With the concern being that if people just randomly pluck any old day, they could indeed pick a day in which the stars are against them and will therefore doom their marriage to be a miserable, unhappy and unprofitable one. So a nice straightforward explanation there. The astrologaster is a man or a woman who plots the dates for weddings according to the auspicious patterns of the stars. Or, if you don't believe in that argument, is an astrologaster B a device, not a person but a device, used by astrologers and architects mostly in ancient times, but theoretically there's no reason why somebody couldn't still use one today, in which the stars are consulted to find the best pattern in which to lay out some planned building. The notion behind the astrologaster being that it is designed to place buildings in patterns that reflect constellations, but auspicious constellations. So, for example, in ancient Egypt, a number of the pyramids and the surrounding temples are laid out in such a pattern that they reflect the layout of some of the more auspicious constellations which the Egyptians considered most particularly holy. So the astrologaster is a sort of plotting device used by architects and astrologers where they join their forces together to build in harmony with the stars. Or, if you don't fancy that interpretation, your final option is C. An astrologaster is a completely useless, incompetent, ineffective astrologer. It's an old term dating back many centuries in Europe to simply describe a really crap astrologer whose predictions never come true, or whose personality readings for people based upon their native horoscopes are so way off as to be almost laughable. In the centuries after the term was initially developed applying to astrologers, astrologaster became used as a term for any kind of person engaged in divination or fortune telling of any sort, tarot cards, crystal balls, palmistry, what have you, who was simply useless at it, a third-rate, naff diviner. And so, I'll ask you again to sit and mull over the possibilities. Is an astrologaster A, someone who fixes the dates for weddings according to the patterns of the stars, or B, a mechanism, a device used by architects and astrologers to plot buildings in alignment with the stars, or C, a completely rubbish fortune teller? You decide. Okay, did you decide A, B or C? Because the correct answer is C. An astrologaster is a completely useless fortune teller who can never manage to predict anything correctly or give a correct personality evaluation for someone with a native horoscope. Okay. If you got that correct, give yourself a point. If you got it wrong, buy someone a bottle of mead, preferably a druid. Our last round is Nepenthes, or Nepenthes, depending on how you wish to pronounce it. And once again, I'll read you the three possible interpretations, then you can decide which one is correct. And we'll find out how you've scored, points out of 4. So, Nepenthes, yet another Greek word, which derives from the name of an ancient herb. It's also applied to a variety of modern-day insect-eating plants, carnivorous plants. But in the original Greek context, Nepenthes was a potion, a magical drug, a magical potion that is brewed up and given to people who are in a state of grief and mourning and bereavement, people whose hearts are broken, whether from a death or maybe the breaking off of a relationship, their loved one has dumped them and run away with the milkman, and they're in such a state of sorrow and heartbreak and grief that this potion from various mysterious plants and herbs is brewed up and presented to them, and once it's drunk down, not only will that person cease to grieve, but the cause of their grief will start to fade into the background, memory will start to ebb away, and peace and calm and quiet and a reasonable adjustment to life as it is now, rather than as they wish it had been in the past, becomes possible. So a medication to treat a broken heart, Nepenthes. Or, if you don't fancy that interpretation, Is Nepenthes, B, a Central European monster, a type of demonic imp that scurries around the place and seeks to take possession of people? In some versions of the story, for example the version from Lithuania, the Nepenthes takes possession of people by biting them and injecting them with its venom. In the version found in Latvia, it takes possession of people by jumping on their back and sort of gluing itself to their back and taking over control of them. But however the Nepenthes demon does it, once it has seized control of a person, that individual is overwhelmed by the frankly repellent urge to eat human flesh. They become a cannibal, and they will remain a cannibal until such time as the possession powers, the demonic power of the Nepenthes is broken. And different cultures in Central Europe have slightly different ideas as to how to break the power of a Nepenthes. For example, some recommend splashing it in holy water, and others recommend making the sufferer go on a pilgrimage to a place of great holiness. And there are all sorts of other, some of them quite brutal, recommendations for getting rid of this demonic spirit. But once it's gone, once this little demonic imp is sent packing, then the poor person who had been taken control of loses their appetite and taste for human flesh. So they go back to normal. They cease to be a cannibal. So, your second interpretation, a Central European demon, an imp, that drives unfortunate people whom it attacks into cannibalism. Or, if you don't fancy that meaning, your last option, not only for this round but for the entire game, is that Nepenthes is a type of red crystal, a red gemstone, that was common in certain regions of Italy and was worn by the ancient Romans as an amulet, usually wrapped round with copper or silver wire, depending on how wealthy the individual purchaser of the amulet was. But this stone, the Nepenthes stone, was believed to particularly protect babies from the unwanted influence of the Lamia. Now, the Lamia was a female demon, half serpent, half human, who slithered about in the night and would attack infants in their cribs. The less supernaturally inclined have sometimes suggested this is a misunderstanding of cot death, when a child suffers illness and potentially dies for no reason that was explicable to the ancient Romans. They would blame the presence of the Lamia as having predated upon their child. But by putting the Nepenthes crystal on a little chain around the baby's neck, it would protect that baby from the predations of the Lamia demon. So those are your three options. It's either a magical potion that ends heartbreak, or it's a Central European demon that instigates cannibalism in the people it possesses, or it's an ancient Roman amulet to protect babies from demons in the night. Which one do you think it is? Mull over and decide. Okay, did you decide A, B or C? Because the correct answer last round is A, a drug that ends heartbreak, used in ancient Greece. Now, if you got all four correct, you have won your free, all expenses paid ticket to Narnia. Please go and sit in your wardrobe and it will be delivered to you at some point within the next 6 months. If you got less than 4 correct, never mind, just go and buy a dictionary and read around. So thank you for playing, and we have to say a thank you to the people who first started Call My Bluff way back when, particularly Robert Robinson, Frank Muir, Patrick Campbell, Arthur Marshall and a load of other people. all the way down to the modern day versions with Sandy Toksvig, Alan Corran and various Z-list celebrities who inspired weirdos like me with their love of strange and obscure words. I hope you enjoyed the game. See you, hopefully, in October.